Cool. So yeah, I'm Simon. I'm one of the co-people who run the Bradford Cloud User Group, along with Saj and Imran. And yeah, tonight I'm going to be going through getting started with blogging, going through a very short slide deck of what options are out there for different platforms. Some you might have already heard of, some you might not have. And then we're going to go do a live demo, hopefully, if the portal plays with us, and yeah, go deploy a very basic Hugo site, but it will give you an idea of how you can use Azure and Git and GitHub to get through that. So starting off, who am I? As I say, I'm Simon. I've been playing around with tech and doing it as a day job for over the last 10 years now. I've tried my hand in different areas of IT. So I started off in the education sector, looking after primary and secondary schools in the UK. Then moved to the private sector, did some bits and pieces, and then wound up, working in Azure and doing lots of fun cloud things, with Microsoft. So yeah, again, from a socials point, if you want to follow me on Twitter or LinkedIn or see what I'm building in my Git profile, yeah, they're all there. And then the new blog that I built at the beginning of this year, which is all based around caffeine, coffee, and is all running on Hugo as a static web app. So it'll give you a small insight into how I've got the blog up and running. So yeah, firstly, just touching on like what are the reasons to blog and the benefits around that. So not only are you learning things and it gives you an opportunity to work through, troubleshoot bits and pieces, and then present it to the community, you can also use it as an online wiki. There's been times before where I've read other people's blog posts and I've blogged stuff and looked around and found them really useful, and then just being able to give back to the community. If you find something that's maybe a little bit quirky, or you found a better way to deploy something maybe that can save time, then yeah, you can write a couple of pages, put some pretty pictures in, and then be like, this is how I've done it. And yeah, following on from that, I've got when we get to the demo stage, I've got a markdown file with all the steps that we're running through for the demo today. So if you want to run through it at a later date, then yeah, you can follow the exact step we've done, and you'll get to the same sort of scenario where we finish with a working site. So choosing a platform, there are many platforms out there. So this is just a hand-picked couple of the most common ones that I knew off the top of my head, and then asked ChatGPT for a couple of others just in case. But obviously, yeah, the main ones are obviously going to be WordPress. It comes in two flavors. There's a self-hosted version if you want to, go old school and have a VPS and then look after and manage all of that. Or you can go down the managed route, which is provided by WordPress, and then you can put your own domain in front of it, and they manage all the behind the scenes patching of the operating system. Then another one is Ghost. I know that there's a couple of people in the community that I've spoken to who've used it. And yeah, these are just a couple of things that are, reasons why you might want to use it. Then yeah, another one is Medium, another well-known platform. From when I've spoken to people about this, it seems to have a little bit of a love-hate relationship depending on where you sit. With the Medium platform. And then the last couple are Hugo, which is what we're going to be deploying tonight. Then an alternative to Hugo can be Jekyll. And then, yeah, there's another couple of others which you can also look at. But yeah, I think the takeaway from this at the moment is that there are many platforms, and at the end of the day, find a platform that you're happy using with and that you can get round and you know how it all works, and makes your blogging experience the most easiest to back to the community and that you enjoy working with. And that is the end of the slide deck pretty much. So what I will do is let me grab the Git link for the demo. So yeah, you can either do it with me as I'm going through this, or you can do it afterwards. So bear with me 2 seconds. And I will post the link in chat for you all, and then we'll go fire up the VM that I've got for this. So if you want to have a play in real time, here's the link which I'm going to be running through. So let me grab my VM and we will go and play. So can you all see my Windows virtual machine on the screen share?
We can see a terminal.
Cool, great.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is for the starting point of this demo, this is a completely blank Windows 11 virtual machine. So we're going to go through and install all the relevant dependencies that we need to get this to run. You might have these already installed, you might not. So this comes from the point of we've got nothing and we're going to build it all out from scratch. So the first couple of things that we're going to want to install is the Git module and VS Code.
Simon, do you
Yes.
want to maximize the terminal so it's easy to read?
Yeah, sure. Is that better for you all?
Yeah.
Cool.
Much better.
So obviously, yeah, this is going to install Git that we're going to use to push the files and bits and pieces to the repository once we've created it, and then VS Code because, yeah, everyone likes a nice IDE to work in. So yeah, this will take a minute or two to install, and then we'll go to GitHub, and then we'll create the repository, and we'll start building the Hugo site. So yeah, while this is running through, does anyone have any questions at the moment from the slide deck or?
Just a few, probably got a few random ones.
Yeah.
Any particular reason? I didn't get to read all the slides, to be fair. Any particular reason you picked Hugo over some of the other flavor of the month things?
Yes, because having spoken to a couple of other friends, they'd had some prior Hugo experience. So well, if I need to troubleshoot some bits and pieces, then I can go to them for help.
Okay.
So Carl Cook, who I think some of us on the call will know, has done previous Hugo things. He was like, get off WordPress, go to Hugo, and yeah, that was basically it.
I'm trying to remember that somebody else was recommending another one, and I can't remember what it was called for static websites, similar to Hugo, I think.
Oh, so you can run. So Hugo creates the static content, but you can also run it on. It's Netflix, I think, which is like the back end. You can also, what I found out was, you can run Hugo in GitHub pages. So for the Brad Cug website is basically it's a static web content all built in Hugo, which is then running in Hugo and GitHub pages, which is really cool. So it then means that there's no cost apart from just the domain, and it all runs in there, which is cool. So yeah, Tom this is the link for Netflix. So cool. So we've got all the dependencies installed that we need. So now what we can do is we can go to Git, and then we'll create the new repository that we need for this. So for the sake of the demo, we're going to call it static web app demo, and then we'll make it a public repo. When you're doing things for an Azure static web app like we're doing in this demo, you can do it private or public. It doesn't really matter. All it needs to do is have access to the GitHub repository, and then you'll be able to deploy the files into it. So we'll now clone the repo to the local PC. Oh yes. Close and reopen the terminal. Cool. So obviously, as this is a new repository, as we can see, it's totally empty. So then the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to create a new Hugo site. So we're going to go Hugo, new site. We're then going to specify the path for where it is, which is under here. And then we're going to do -- force on the end of it, because obviously with it being a Git repository, you've got the .git folder in there. So this basically allows us to force overwrite the files in there. So cool. We've got our Hugo website framework built out. So what we can do now is if we launch this, so you can run Hugo locally while you're building your site out and creating local content and debugging if the case might be. So if we run this, oh wait, go into the folder, it does help, and then run it from inside of it. So it then launches the site locally. So then if we open the local host link, as we can see here, it says that there's a page not found. And the reason for this is because if we then open this in VS Code and then have a look through, so this is what a vanilla out-of-the-box Hugo theme looks like. Site looks like. And then if we look under the themes folder, there's currently nothing there. So the next thing that we then need to do is download a theme, and there's a whole list of themes. So if you are having a look at the link I've just put in chat, you can see that there's a whole plethora of themes that you can pick. And having spoken to a couple of friends when I was building out the slide deck, one of the things that we agreed on is that trying to find a theme that you like, which matches all your branding and various bits and pieces, is probably the hardest part of sorting out a blog. Creating the content's relatively easy because you go through a theme or a topic and you create the content, create all the media and upload it. But trying to find a theme that you like that matches everything is the hardest part, I find. So what we're going to do then is the theme that I picked for today's demo is called the Bilberry theme, and the link's in chat if you guys want to see that. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a Git submodule link for it. So what this basically does is think of it as like, from a Windows perspective, it's like a symbolic link or a shortcut folder. So it basically references the GitHub repo for the theme. So it then means that if the owner updates any of the modules or the files or any of the CSS for updating the theme, it will automatically pull those changes down rather than having them as like a folder copy locally. So to be able to do this, you run the Git submodule. This then, you can see here, it's then cloning it into the themes folder for us. And you can see in VS Code, we now get all the theme in there. So then what we need to do next is we need to configure the Hugo TOML file, which is like, it's the configuration settings file. And then in here, we can put in the values that we need. So I'm going to overwrite these. So these are the default settings that you get from the TOML file. And then what we do here is we're going to overwrite it with the base URL for the website that we're going to create. We're going to leave the language code for now as default, and then we're going to reference the theme as the Bilberry theme. So if we now rebuild the site and give it a second to generate all the back end, now when we open it, you can see here it's gone from saying that there was no page found because there was no theme or anything configured to now going, well, here we go, we've got our default site. So that's got you a very vanilla theme sorted on it. And then if you wanted to change the title, for example, we can come down to here and we could call this Simon's blog. And then because it's running real time, it's failed to reload. Interesting. Oh, it's because it's put another comma in there. It'll then reload, and then you can make changes on the fly in real time. So that sorts out the site and getting it up and running. To then make content for the site to create posts, what we can do is we can stop running the site for a moment. And then if we type in Hugo new and then posts, and we'll call this like welcome to my blog.md. This then creates a markdown file. And that was one of the other reasons why I liked Hugo, is because I've been writing a lot of markdown files for work, and I can just use the same markdown knowledge and transfer it over. So when you're doing content and bits and pieces, if you come up to the content folder, it will then you can put all your content in here. So for my actual Built with Caffeine blog, I've created a pages folder and then a posts folder. So there's like some static pages for contacts and some external links and bits and pieces. And then for all the posts that I do, I create a folder within the post folder with the title of whatever the blog's going to be. And then I'll create the markdown file, and then I can put any images in there at the same time. So if we then set this from draft state from true to false, and then put hello world in here, for example, when we then restart the server and then go back to our browser page, we can now see that we've got our first post there. So that's basically Hugo up and running. It's running locally. You can do all your local development here, work out, all your theming, and then build all your content out. And now we're ready to sort of push it up to Azure and to the static web app. So what we first want to do is we want to commit this to Git. So then when we build the Azure static web app, it will automatically pull through. So to do this, we can do git add, and if you do an asterisk like that, it will add everything within the working directory. As we can see, we can then do git commit message upload. So yeah, this is useful to know. If this is the first time that you're running Git, you'll need to configure these values. So we can have this as Simon, and then for example, we could have and then if we do git push, yeah, there we go, because there was nothing staged. So that's now created that. And now when we do git push, this will then push all the files from our local PC up to the Git repo. And yeah, we can see that that's now pushing up, and it's now pushed to the main branch. So if we now go back to our Git repository and refresh, we'll see all the files in there. Cool. So let's go build the static web app then. So I've pre-made the resource group for this evening. We can then go create a resource. We're going to go for static web app. Then go to Azure static web app. And then, yeah, we get to fill in all the details. So we could call this Brad Cog demo SWA. For what we're going to do for tonight, you can run it on the free tier. My current blog's running on the free tier, and I've not seen any major issues with it performance-wise. And then from the deployment sources, you can pick and choose. Obviously, I've got everything in GitHub, as we've seen, but you can use other places, so either Azure DevOps, GitLab, or GitHub. And then, yeah, you come down, we'll pick the Built with Caffeine, and then we want to find the Azure static demo, and then we want this to be Hugo. So this bit's important. The amount of times that when I've been testing this demo and forgotten to push the Hugo site to the branch, but you'll then run into the issue of you'll pick the branch, you'll pick the repository, but there'll be no branch set up. So yeah, remember to push the code first before you create the web app. And then that's pretty much it for the deployment. We go next, check all this out. And then when we create it, what this will do is it will push a YAML file back to the branch, which we'll see in a minute or two. So yeah, you see here that it's added the Azure static web apps file. And this is basically where it will then build the site. So if we come into the action, we'll see it building in a minute or two. And this is basically copying the content from the Git repo into the static web app, which takes, yeah, depending on how many files are in there, a couple of minutes. And that's, yeah. So it's now building, deploying into the app. And yeah, we can see it's running it, testing it, and that's it. Job is finished. So if we now go to the resource, so this is what a static web app looks like from like the admin side of things. So you get your URL, which branch it's looking at. There's some basic monitoring over who's connected to it and not connected to it, and so on and so forth. And then if we click on this URL, you might be asking yourself, well, this doesn't look like the same site that we've built locally, right? It looks like it's a little bit of a broken theme. And this is because if you remember, in the Hugo TOML file we configured, we set the base URL to be a custom domain, or the name that you want to use for your blog, for example. And because of how the static web app's configured and it's all using SSL certificates, this is why it looks a little bit broken, because it's not using the nice domain name that we've got. So to fix this, we come back to our static web app. We then go down to custom domains, and then we want to add a custom domain. So I've got all my DNS zones in Azure, which makes it a little bit easier. If you've got them hosted in, say, Cloudflare, for example, you can use another DNS provider, and then you'll be able to add the records in. We'll then come through here. We'll come down to here. Then we will put in what we called it, which is Hugo Demo. And then we'll click add. And then what this basically does is, because it's all within Azure and it's got access to the Azure DNS records, it will create a CNAME record and do all the validation for me, but it takes a minute or two to do this. So while we wait for Azure DNS to do its thing and create and validate the record, is there any questions at the moment?
There's nothing in chat, Simon, either.
I think I was the one wondering, like, what's your take on on just like outsourcing the backend to like third party and just like doing the front end and just the design of like the front end stuff?
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons why I chose to go down doing it through Azure is just because I use Azure on a daily basis, and it was something that I was curious about doing. But I know that there's a couple of people who I've spoken to who have used like the Netflix thing, and they've had like no issues with it. I think it comes down to how much involvement do you want from like the back end perspective. Like, do you just want to write the content and have someone else manage and look after all that for you, or do you want to get your hands dirty in some of it in building out and maintaining and supporting the back end side of it? So I think it's more down to personal preference rather than anything else. Cool. So that looks like the domain is now validated. So if we then set this to default, and then if we go back to here and now load the site, you can see that the site's now loaded. We've got our sample blog post in there, and the site's live and ready to go. And then you can add more content to it at a later date. And that's pretty much it for my demo. There is obviously a lot more that you can do with this afterwards that I've done a couple of actual blogs on, for automating posting to Twitter and LinkedIn using Zapier and Buffer, and then adding in custom shortcode URLs and bits and pieces. But hopefully it gives you a small insight into how relatively quickly it can be to get a blog up and running. And if you went down the GitHub Pages route, for example, it then won't cost you anything. The only cost you've got is just buying a domain and paying for the domain, and everything else is pretty much free and given there for you. So
Simon, from a free hosting perspective, how much content can you put on there before you start running into you need to now pay for a paid tier?
That's a really good question. So obviously it's mainly just markdown files and images. So if you were to compress those images so they were really small, I mean, looking at the hosting plans for the options, this is basically what it gives you. So it says here that you've got a max maximum app size of 250 meg, and then the standard one is 500.
Does it give you a storage limit though? I can't see that on there. Staging environments.
No.
You know, oh, that's interesting. So
Yeah.
it gives you bandwidth and it gives you app size. Okay.
Yeah. But then, yeah,
That's
I
good.
guess one way that you could get around the storage issue is if you use like a storage account, for example, you could then reference that and then map them in as like a CDN style delivery system rather than, yeah, hosting them direct within the static web app.
Yeah. Well, there would be a cost to the storage account, wouldn't there?
Yeah, there would be.
Now I was just curious how big you can go with your site in the free tier and how much
Sure.
content you can put in there. But
Well,
that's good.
I'll let you know. I think so far, so I started the site, the new site, just over Christmas, and I think I've got like 6 posts up there already. So yeah, I can let you know as I continue my blogging adventure. Yeah, and go from there.
That's good. Great demo, mate. Thank you.
No worries. Thanks very much. But yeah, that I think that wraps up the end of our February user group.